Guess what, everybody? Canada is quietly winning the trade war with the United States, and we're doing it with boycotts, booze bans, and just saying, "Oh, thanks, buddy," to Trump's demands.
Vegas is freaking out. Florida's panicking. Outlet malls at the border are emptier than Trump's inaugurational grandstands. And all of this comes down to one thing: a little trade deal that Trump bragged was the best agreement ever. That's CUSMA, or USMCA if you're American. And that is now blowing up in his face.
Because Donald Trump doesn't just want a trade deal. Prime Minister Mark Carney says he wants Canada as a dependent state. Those are Trump's words. He wants us relying on the U.S. for trade, energy, digital infrastructure, even the right to exist without tariffs.
But Prime Minister Carney's basically saying, buddy, no. We're partners or we're nothing. Now that, Dave, is leadership, and that is stability. And that's someone who understands how the world actually works, not the world Trump imagined while scarfing down a fillet of fish in his golden bunker.
So today, we're breaking down what's really happening with CUSMA, the U.S. grocery list of demands, why they're suddenly obsessed with our milk and liquor, why they're terrified of our streaming laws,
and how Canadian boycotts, booze bans, and travel cutbacks are giving us more leverage over Trump's America than tanks or sanctions ever could.
All right, let's get into the fun part here. The U.S. grocery list of demands. Jamieson Greer, Trump's trade rep, sat down with Congress and laid out exactly what they want from Canada.
And it reads like an Amazon cart from someone who hasn't checked their budget since it's 1997.
Demand 1. Canada must increase market access for U.S. dairy, which is code for, please shovel hormone-loaded milk into Canada even though Canadians don't want it, didn't ask for it, and already allow tariff-free U.S. dairy up to the quota.
And here's the kicker. American producers haven't even hit the existing quota. Ever. They can't even sell the amount they're already allowed.
But sure, let's blow up North American trade because Wisconsin overshot production again.
And before we even go on, let's be clear. Canadians don't want to drink your milk, Trump. So even if they wanted Canadians to drink their slop, we'd do exactly what we did with the American booze. Boycott it.
And speaking of booze, let's talk about the funniest part of this whole CUSMA meltdown. The U.S., the world's biggest superpower, land of Silicon Valley and Wall Street, is absolutely fuming because Canada banned their liquor.
Jack Daniels lost 60% of its Canadian sales. 60! And suddenly Washington is acting like, we sank their battleship!
They're not mad about geopolitics. They're mad because Canadians said, no tariffs? Oh, then no Tennessee whiskey. And somehow this triggered an existential crisis in Washington.
If your empire can be destabilized by LCBO shelving decisions, well, maybe you're not the empire you think you are.
And honestly, this is the tell, right? Canada has leverage, and Carney knows it. We have real leverage. Economic, cultural, consumer leverage. Canadians stopped buying American products, and the U.S. government reacted like we slashed their tires.
And guess what, Dave? We didn't need tanks, sanctions, or threats. Just, no thanks, we'll drink something else.
Now, let's take a look at another one of their crazy demands. Scrap or gut the Online Streaming Act and Online News Act because they discriminate against U.S. tech firms.
But here's what's actually happening. U.S. tech giants want even more access to our market, more control, more profit, and they hate that Canada is insisting they follow Canadian cultural rules like everyone else.
And here's the part Washington really can't stand. Canada already has laws protecting our culture, laws that go back decades. The Broadcasting Act, which was strengthened in the 1980s, it created our Canadian content rules. And these rules, they're not going anywhere.
Because without these protections, Canada would have been swallowed whole by American media before Celine Dion ever belted out a single note in English. Without CanCon, there's no Rush, Shania Twain, no Christmas playlist by Michael Bublé. Honestly, half the global pop charts would collapse without Canada propping them up. I'm serious.
And it doesn't stop at music either. Those laws made sure that Canadians actually saw Canadian talent. Without them, we don't have Martin Short, John Candy, Catherine O'Hara, Eugene Levy. We don't get the people who built comedy as we know it.
And forget our TV history. Without Canada, There's no Schitt's Creek, no Kim's Convenience, no Degrassi, which means no Drake. And let's be honest, the U.S. industry really needs Drake for that one.
This is what the U.S. Streaming Act fight is actually about. They want American platforms to flood the system and push our stories into the margins.
No way. We're not letting them, because Canadians deserve to see themselves on screen, not just as background characters in somebody else's universe. And we're not about to dismantle the cultural protections that have built every artist we just named.
So when the U.S. says the Streaming Act discriminates against American media giants, what they really mean is, please let us take over your culture the way we take over everything else.
And Canada's answer? No, absolutely not. We're keeping our laws, our talent, our identity, and our tragically hit playlists right where they are.
Meanwhile, we Canadian creators are actually producing great content, and the U.S. entertainment industry is floundering under its own weight. People are tired of endless reboots and superhero sequels that feel like they were written by someone who hasn't touched grass in a decade.
All right, moving on. Let's talk about the next demand. Change procurement rules in Ontario, Quebec, and BC to give U.S. companies more access. I think they have quite a bit of access, Dave.
Yeah. So what does that actually mean? Well, it means let American corporations swoop in and undercut local workers during a trade war. I think that's a hard pass from all Canadians.
Yeah, we'll leave it there. Then comes the Montana demand. They want Alberta to redesign its entire electricity market because a single American provider, they felt left out.
Montana, the state with more cows than people, wants Canada to redesign its entire energy market so one U.S. private provider can feel special? I don't think so.
I wonder how much they contributed to Trump's meme coin. Anyway, Greer floated the idea of doing separate bilateral deals. Canada versus the U.S. alone, which is the oldest divide and conquer trick in the book.
But then, in the same breath, he said some issues absolutely have to be dealt with trilaterally. So even the U.S. can't keep its strategy straight. One minute they want to isolate us, the next they need all three countries at the table. You know what it's like? It's like watching someone try to assemble IKEA furniture without reading the instructions. There's a lot of confidence, but very little coherence.
And then, this is rich. The U.S. wants to extend CUSMA for, wait for it everyone, 16 more years.
Gee, 16 years? Almost like that's the exact amount of time Trump imagines he'll be in office before passing the kingdom to Barron like some budget version of the House of Windsor.
Oh, it's really cute, Dave. The guy who stole the election, choked American democracy, and is now clinging to power like it's the last drumstick in the KFC bucket, he thinks that long-term stability is something he gets to define.
Well, you know what? That's not going to happen. As if Canada would ever believe a single word out of this man's mouth. He's the one who negotiated CUSMA, his deal, and then dismantled it the minute that he got back into office. He's in violation of half of that agreement right now while insisting that he deserves another 16 years.
The man can't keep a promise, a handshake, or a business deal. His loyalty lasts exactly as long as the segment he just watched on Fox News. By the time he finishes a sentence, he's already disagreed with it. Shiny red ball. Shiny red ball.
Meanwhile, Canada is winning on every single front. Canadian boycotts? Working. Booze bans? Well, those are definitely working. Travel to the U.S. down nearly 50%. And that's before the full fallout from border detainments hit.
Vegas? They're freaking out. And Florida? Panicking. California is begging for tourists, and airlines, they are cutting routes.
Americans are feeling it as well. Businesses are panicking, governors are begging Washington to just figure it out.
Now, that's leverage, Canada, and it's leverage we didn't even have to fire a shot to get. Just like Putin took over the USA without firing a shot. Trump really is the biggest loser.
So let's talk about the part that the U.S. media refuses to confront. The American economy is shrinking, inflation is rising, confidence is tanking, and let's be truthful here, people are scared. And the man at the top, President, He's a baby tyrant whose entire worldview is shaped by the fact that America never loved him.
Yeah, Hollywood refused him an Emmy. New York bankers, they laughed him out of boardrooms. He had to run to Russia like a little baby for money, and they filled his head with anti-American poison because Putin knew the one thing that would take America down. If you want to tear the U.S. apart, you empower the guy who still cries about the correspondence dinner from 2011 when he was roasted.
Everything he's doing now, sabotaging CUSMA, attacking allies, destabilizing the economy, is revenge against a country that never took him seriously. Not as a businessman, not as an entertainer, and certainly not as a leader.
I laugh, but it's very serious. He stole this election. He's clinging to power, and he wants to drag his country and his neighbors down with him. And that's dangerous.
It really is. And who benefits from a fractured North America? Putin. A weak U.S. economy, a trade war between allies, energy uncertainty, supply chain instability. Tell me that doesn't read like a checklist from Moscow.
Putin needs America distracted, divided, and economically punch-drunk, which they are. Trump's tariffs? Check. Fighting with Venezuela, Denmark, Canada, and Mexico? Check. Threatening the deal that stabilizes the whole Western world? Big check.
Remember, CUSMA isn't just a trade deal. It's a security architecture. It ties our economy so tightly that any damage to one damages all three. Every economist knows that blowing it up would A. Destroy the U.S. auto manufacturing, B. Raise U.S. food prices, and C. Hit U.S. exports to Canada, which are up 56% since 2020.
Yeah, they really need us. So who destroys their biggest export markets unless they're serving someone else's interests?
And let's be crystal clear here. Canada has already legislated that supply management, including dairy, is off the table. We're not negotiating it. We're not surrendering it. We're not even opening the door just a crack.
And both Prime Minister Carney and LeBlanc said publicly, Canada has seen no indication the U.S. is actually pulling out of CUSMA.
And you know why? Because if Trump pulled out, American farmers, manufacturers, automakers, and exporters would burn down the White House gates. And it wouldn't be Canadians this time around. It would be his own people.
Trump loves to talk tough in public, but even Greer admitted business and labor groups overwhelmingly want CUSMA renewed.
So what happens next? Canada enters the review from a position of strength because Trump already backed off his "I'm ripping it up" threats the second Carney called his bluff.
The U.S. knows it needs North American manufacturing to compete with China. It knows tariff hurts Americans more than Canadians. And it knows Canada won't bend on dairy or cultural sovereignty.
But Trump, you know what he'll do? He'll keep this chaos simmering because economic instability, that's his brand, and Russia's dream scenario.
So here's the reality. CUSMA, it will be renegotiated. There will be a lot of drama. Trump will bluster as usual, and Canada will walk in calm, with facts, and a spine made of titanium.
And if Trump really wants Canada to bend the knee, he's going to have to bring something more compelling than hormone milk, dead-end tariffs, and Putin's wish list.
This isn't 2018 Trump. Canada isn't afraid. Carney isn't Trudeau. And North America can't afford another round of Trump's self-inflicted economic sabotage.
So we'll keep you posted as this review ramps up. But for now, make sure you stay informed, stay fired up, and for the love of Gouda, support Canadian dairy.
I love cheese.
Me too.
All right, that's where we're leaving it today. CUSMA is heating up, Canada's holding firm, and Trump is discovering once again that Canadians don't fold just because he stomps his feet.
And if you want to keep up with every twist in this saga, make sure you hit subscribe, give this video a like, and yes, click that little bell so YouTube actually tells you when we post. We've got a lot more coming.
And if you want to support the channel while looking like a patriotic legend, check out the merch. We've got shirts, mugs, hoodies, all the essentials for surviving a trade war with Trump and your mega uncle at Christmas.
If you're craving deeper dives and more behind-the-scenes analysis that we can't always get on YouTube, then head over to our Substack, The Planet Democracy, because that's where long-form truth lives. No ads, no noise, just clear-eyed reporting with a little Canadian spice.
And of course, if you really want to be a part of what we're building, join the A-Team. That's our members community. And yes, we show you all the bloopers.
So thanks for being here. Thank you for caring about what happens to this country. And thank you for standing with us while Canada digs in its heels and refuses to be pushed around.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Ciao for now.